Star Wars: How the Sequel Trilogy Broke the Skywalker Saga. I have to fight myself. I have to resist the urge. Already a million videos have been made on the topic. No, I'm not worthy. I have to go back to Jakku. I'm no one. Just one of the billions of people in the audience. Just a bystander. Just a casual fan. Well, maybe I'm not such a casual fan after all. But I'm not a die-hard fanboy either. So you can understand that I have some very strong feelings after watching Star Wars: The Rise of the Skywalker. Actually, it is the opposite of a strong feeling. It's an emptiness, a void, kind of like the infinite pit that Rey saw in The Last Jedi. It is dirty and disgusting, and turns out it is just that. It is not a rabbit hole that will take you to Wonderland. It is just a big old pile of disgust, filthy, steaming excrement. Kind of a heartbreak where you catch your lover red-handed with your best friend in your bed. You know you cannot go back to that ever again. The sanctity has been compromised. The purity has been tainted. You felt it coming a mile away and yet you chose to look the other way. And now that it is here, in your face, all you can do is walk away with your head down because you know that you too are at fault for having any expectations at all. Now that the ranting is over, we can talk about the rise of the Skywalker. But talking about it in isolation will only shed light on its own failure. This film not only lets down the sequel trilogy, but the entire Star Wars saga. So it is important to discuss this movie in the context of the sequel, the original, and the prequel trilogies. Grab your popcorn, kids, this is going to be a long one. But fair warning, I have not consumed Star Wars in all mediums. I have not read the books, the novels, or its comic books. I have not played any Star Wars games. I have seen parts of the Clone Wars. I have yet to see The Rebels and The Mandalorian. I do not follow fan fiction, so my knowledge of the canon outside of the movies, if there is any, is limited. So, here we go. I saw The Rise of the Skywalker on opening night in my city. Usually with trilogies, sequels, and movies that share a continuity with other movies in a franchise, I try to watch the prequels the night before, or as was the case in The Dark Knight Rises, right before the movie show. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am a proud nerd. Before the Endgame came out, I spent a month watching all the MCU movies starting from Iron Man all the way to Avengers Infinity War. But this time was different. The Last Jedi had killed my interest in the sequel trilogy. I wanted The Last Jedi to be good. I was a fan of Rian Johnson's body of work prior to that movie. I saw it multiple times in hopes of finding a story I liked, but I couldn't. There were great moments and new ideas in that movie, but the core failure of The Last Jedi was destroying the legacy of well-established characters, notably the sad Luke and the Leia Poppins. The bottom line is, I didn't care much this time. So I went in remembering what I had seen the year before. As a moviegoer, you must be aware that when you watch a movie with little to no expectations, you generally end up having a positive time. You are not that vested in the story and are there to have a good time. The Rise of the Skywalker failed to deliver on even those expectations. Right off the face, we are slapped with the reappearance of Emperor Palpatine, which in itself is a dick move. I know it had been a major talking point from the trailers, but the way it was revealed was a real insult to the intelligence of even the most casual fans of the series. Then there was mindless chasing of one MacGuffin after another to keep the audiences entertained. It doesn't. Martin Scorsese recently described comic book movies as theme park rides. This movie was the roller coaster that shakes frenetically but doesn't really go anywhere. The fast-paced plot that's meant to keep the audience hooked actually becomes a drag, especially when new characters are introduced who you know do not have any life after the movie. This merry-go-round is peppered with one-word fixes for concepts presented in the previous entries like the Holdo maneuver. It tries to create drama and stakes by showcasing deaths, only to undo them in the very next moment. Even the MCU is guilty of this, but at least it takes them a movie to undo the damage. And then the plot conveniently wraps itself up in an instance because it is approaching close to 2-hour mark. Then there is the redemption arc of Kylo Ren, which in itself is a dick punch of the worst kind. At the end, Rey triumphs over Palpatine all on her own because she's a strong, independent woman. I mean, she's strongest with the Force and connected to all the Ghost Jedis. Useless Poe gets his ass saved by Lando in space, and Finn rides a horse on the wing of a Death Star cruise ship in space. Sure, The Rise of the Skywalker had a tall order to fill. It had to conclude the sequel trilogy without doing the kind of damage that The Last Jedi did, and also hopefully fill in the narrative gaps between the original and the sequel trilogy. But it fails the sequel trilogy by not being brave enough to follow through on the ideas presented in The Last Jedi, and directly contradicts the conclusions and ideas of the original and the prequel trilogies, effectively rendering them all meaningless. Just the reappearance of Palpatine means that Anakin Skywalker failed to bring balance to the Force. If you watch the sequel trilogy in the context of the original trilogy, you don't know how the First Order toppled the New Republic after the Return of the Jedi. How it became so powerful that it turned the governing Republic into a disparate rebellion. No. Calling it Dead Palpatine's master plan is not a satisfactory explanation, especially since we have seen him work behind the scenes and pull the strings in the prequel trilogy. Who was the guy in the beginning of the sequel trilogy who knew where Luke was, when his own sister didn't, when his best friend didn't? There are so many threads which tease great revelations but went nowhere, like where the hell did they find Luke's original lightsaber from? This patchy attention to detail made the sequel trilogy incomplete. A good example of such an execution would be from another space opera, the Firefly Serenity universe. The character of the preacher was mysterious. No one knew where he came from, but there were enough hints at his past as a former Alliance soldier and a sympathizer to the Browncoats. But those threads did not stick out. And now for the big elephant in the room. The Rise of the Skywalker does a hard U-turn on The Last Jedi by making Rey's lineage significant without understanding the ramifications. This single point creates continuity issues with the original, the prequel, and the sequel trilogies. Where were Rey's electric powers when she was being confronted by Luke in The Last Jedi? Does that mean that Palpatine's bloodline has always been more powerful than Skywalker's bloodline? The original bloodline meant to bring balance to the Force? If so, why did the Emperor invest so much time in corrupting and adopting new apprentices when he should have been fornicating across the galaxy creating a Sith army? Surely, a powerful Sith who could foresee so many things have the foresight to see this one tiny thing. According to the prequel trilogy, only those who have trained in the dark ways of the Sith command such power. We saw Count Dooku showcase the same powers against Yoda in the Attack of the Clones. How can Rey, a Jedi Knight and Master in training, showcase such powers when her trainers Luke and Leia could not? Master Yoda said that Sith always operate in twos in the prequel trilogy, yet we see an entire planet full of Sith? People? What? You can say that it doesn't matter, but it does matter because we live in times of binge watching and consuming season-long content in a single sitting. Such blatant disregard for canon and lack of attention to detail is being disrespectful to the audiences and the fans. In many ways, the Star Wars sequel trilogy mirrors the first 3 DCEU movies. The Force Awakens is the Man of Steel, which introduces us to a new hero with familiar traits in a brand new world. It honors the iconography that came before and establishes that nothing will be the same. Sure, The Force Awakens is a far superior movie made by a fanboy who knows how to use plot and nostalgia to his advantage. But both movies are guilty of introducing overpowered heroes. To Man of Steel's credit, it had a much more interesting villain. The Last Jedi is the Batman v Superman. It is divisive and controversial because it subverts popular characters by portraying them out of character. We are talking about Hopeless Luke and the Killer Batman. And The Rise of the Skywalker is the Justice League, which seems retrofitted to undo the damage of the predecessor in hopes of delivering a satisfactory, crowd-pleasing conclusion. Besides spitting on the original and prequel trilogies, the biggest failure of the sequel trilogy is the lack of justice to the new generation of heroes it introduces. Star Wars has always been the story of 2 guys and a girl in a galaxy far, far away. For the original, it was Luke, Leia, and Han. For the prequel, it was Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme. The sequel trilogy introduces two guys and a girl in politically correct role reversals. But there are no clear, well thought out arcs for Poe, Finn, and Rey, and even Kylo Ren, which ends up wasting the talent of the actors embodying those roles. Rey's arc was essentially done in The Force Awakens when she beats Kylo Ren. Finn's arc was done in The Last Jedi when he transitions from a coward to a sacrificing hero. Poe's character arc started in The Rise of Skywalker when we realize he was a smuggler before joining the rebellion. Kylo Ren was set up as the ultimate evil in The Last Jedi in ways that Darth Vader wasn't in the original trilogy. But lo and behold, J.J. Abrams did a complete U-turn to redeem him. Unsuccessfully, might I add. The prequel trilogy is guilty of a lot of things like Jar Jar Binks, midichlorians, and mixing sand with romance, but no one can fault it for lacking character arcs for the main three characters. The failure of the sequel trilogy lies solely with Disney, and more importantly, Kathleen Kennedy. Rather than being a creative supervisor and working on a coherent story for the entire trilogy, she let the creative team for each movie take the franchise forward as they saw fit. She got J.J. Abrams, who's exceptionally good at beginnings but terrible at sustaining the momentum. In order to introduce and focus on the new characters and bring back the excitement to the franchise, he put Luke completely in the background and made several choices like the super-powered Force user Rey that had dug a hole for Rian Johnson long before he came on board. Colin Trevorrow's leaked outline of Episode 9 shows that he had a clear idea to land the narrative and character threads of The Last Jedi. You can't imagine anything like this happening at the MCU with Kevin Feige at the helm. Sure, there has been lots of behind-the-scenes drama, and a lot of high-potential creative voices left the franchise after feeling stifled by the process. But all those decisions were made to protect the larger story canvas of the franchise and its brand. In retrospect, it's a good thing that Disney purchased the MCU after it had been shaped by Jon Favreau, Joss Whedon, and Kevin Feige, and had already taken off with the Avengers. Now, I cannot rant anymore about Star Wars. All I can say to conclude this video is thank you. Thank you, Kathleen Kennedy and J.J. Abrams, for killing Star Wars for me. You took my money, used my emotions and love for a property, and broke the franchise completely. You are the true pirates of the film industry.